Hello, parents and educators. Welcome to Connecting Parents and Educators in the Early Years. Thank you for joining us. Today, Pavla and I will be discussing school readiness. It's an exciting time, but it can also be stressful. Let's delve into the issues surrounding school readiness.
School readiness. Let's talk about school readiness. What is it? Is it about being able to count to 1 to 10 and recognize the numbers and perhaps solve some, simple quantity issues? Or is it all about literacy, being able to recognize letters and being maybe able to link them to the phonics? What is school readiness? Who is defining school readiness? Ari.
Thank you, Pavla. So, usually we look at school readiness from parents and educators' perspective. Understandably, parents and educators have aspirations for the children. They want to give children a good foundation in the early years so that they do well in primary school and then secondary school and then university and then finally be able to enter the workforce and be able to survive, basically. But if we were to ask children, what are their thoughts on school readiness? Do they think they're school ready? What do you think they will say? I know you have experience from your own personal experience, so please share with us.
Absolutely. So I need to transform myself 5 years ago with my daughter. I actually did give her this question and I asked her, so are you ready to go to school? And what makes you think that you are ready to school? Yes, mummy, I am ready to go to school because I have to put my bag on my shoulders. Right. But she didn't stop there. She carried on. And also, I know how to put my shoes on. I know how to put my socks on, and I know how to get dressed. So a lot of skills-based abilities. And then she told me, but mummy, but I'm also ready to go to school because I know how to count to 1 to 10. Look. And then she obviously demonstrated that. And then also, I know how to write my name. And my friend can't go to school because he does not know how to write his name. So that's really interesting, isn't it? Okay, because obviously these, experiences, what she recognizes as the fundamental kind of like a factor for her to qualify to go to schools, she must have learned them somewhere, didn't she? Okay, I can go to school because I can write my name. And I used to always say to her, wow, then you are ready then, aren't you? But is it what really children need, in terms of their knowledge and skills to be able to successfully transition into the schools, being able to just write their name and being able to count to 1 to 10?
Yes, absolutely. I think we need to look at what we understand about child development. Are they ready to go to school at 3, at 5, at 7, at 10? What is the age where they should start school? So we're going to discuss a little bit more about that.
Child development, and one more time, child development. Absolutely critical to somehow envelope the topic of school readiness with. Okay, why is child development knowledge so important? Well, so we're not going to be pressurizing children to do things that they are not ready for. Okay, so if you're thinking about the maturity of the brain, it just happens over time, doesn't it? Children are just not born ready to read and write right from the word go. No, it just basically matures as the brain matures. I've got some image that I would like to share with you that I am just going to share right now, and I will give probably a few seconds of silence. So, looking at the first brain of a child that is 5 years old, then it goes into preteen brain, teen brain, and 20-year-old brain. So what do we see? The colors are different, aren't they? And what do these colors tell us? That the brain's red colors or yellow or orange are those parts of brain that are less fully mature. Looking at the brain right to the right hand side, tell us in those colors of blue and purple, those parts of brains are more fully mature. So let's go back to our wonderful, beautiful faces here. So what does it tell us? So why would we lower the benchmark for children in terms of their age down? So when they are 3 years old, let's thinking about the practice that, you know, children are being exposed to literacy and mathematics, the concept that really is more about symbols. Okay, so it's a symbolic type of brain that the children actually need to develop, which really matures around the age of 7. And I'm sure, Ari, you would agree with me with Jeremy Bruno theory, Piaget's Vygotsky theory. We know this already, don't we? Okay, so why would we be polluting the children's brain with the literacy and mathematical oriented activities that they are actually not ready for, and then perhaps focus in that early stage of their life for their readiness for school, not on literacy, not on mathematics, but on what they can do. So skills, the social and emotional development.
Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, earlier is not necessarily better. Okay. Once a child's brains are fully matured and ready, he can pick up letter sounds and number bonds in a week or 2 weeks, perhaps. But if his brains are not ready, okay, has not matured, then we are imposing our expectations on children, making them, you know, do something that may not make very much sense to them, but I'm just doing it to please you. Then children are, their brains, it's going to trigger a stress response, you know, that fight or flight response. You know, flight is just not concentrating or maybe running away physically from the activity, or fight, they may throw tantrums and show misbehavior. And what are the reasons for that? And we think, oh, children don't want to learn, they're being difficult. But actually, this is just biological. It's a natural response that's triggered by the stress, because I'm not ready, please. Why are you putting me in this position? So that's why we need to understand child development. We need to ask ourselves, you know, what are we putting children through? What do children really need? So that's what we're going to discuss a little bit more in the next point.
So back to that big question, what school readiness is all about. We have to really take the children's lead on this one. Child-centered approach is the right way forward. We cannot be pressurizing children in terms of what they should be able to do at specific time of their life in order for them to be qualified, for example, to enter the school. Okay, so school readiness needs to be child-led.
Absolutely, Pavla. Yes. You know, I think both parents and educators should think about, how do we build the love of learning, basically. You know, imagine this is the beginning of a child's academic career, you know, in the early years. So they should have a positive attitude to learning. We don't want to make them feel, oh goodness, I'm pressurized by school. You know, this is what it's going to be like for the rest of my life. And they have a negative experience, and we don't want to crush that. Instead, we want them to be excited to go to school, to be motivated to learn and discover new experiences. So therefore, I think parents and educators should think about, right, maybe we should focus more on building those positive attitudes to learning. I'm sure you have some ideas, Pavla. Can you share with us?
Indeed, and it might sound a little bit harsh, but if you think about it, you know, in order for children to thrive and to be the lifelong learner, that's exactly what we would like from children, or this is what the kind of like a big aspiration really should be for parents and educators, to build the independence for children's learning, but be independent in that way to be able to fail and then bring it back together with the resilience to try again.
Yes, absolutely. Spot on for Pavla, So this is something, we would both encourage parents and educators to come together and have that conversation and talk about how do we build the love of learning? How do we ensure that we're not pressurizing our children, to be so-called school ready, even before their brains are ready. So I think, we hope that, this will give you lots to think about. So, Pavla, we have heard there's a perception out there that children have missed out on learning. And, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, where they have been staying at home for a long period of time. So, and if they're studying online, it's never the same as face-to-face learning. So there's this perception that children are missing out on learning and they need to catch up when they come back to school or when they settle into the new online school routine. So this sounds to me to be quite pressurizing for children. It can be. So how could parents and educators collaborate to ensure there's this smoother transition into the new normal that we're living in?
Oh gosh, where do we start, right, Ari, with this? So we are all obviously living through the era of pandemic, and it's a certain level of trauma that is falling down into our lap. And how do we ensure that that when the children go back to the settings in schools and they are already there, that they are not somehow affected by it? Because let's face it, the environment that is not nurturing, or if the environment that is pressurizing, children to, perform in a certain way, is not really do any favors to anybody. Let's face it, anxious teachers perhaps will not be the best teachers for the children to feel good about themselves and then moving forward into the new normal, as you were saying. So what can be done, in my view, and we obviously share those discussions, you and I, all the time, it's the collaboration, it's the collaborative approach that that takes away the expectations, and it's very much in the moment. So what we are dealing at the moment with, we need to kind of like reconnect with each other again, don't we? Okay. And not only parents and educators, but the children need to reconnect with their environment in the setting. So, we know we go through different types of social arrangements. Children used to be in a much larger groups, they are in a smaller groups now at the moment. So the emotional and social reconnection with the environment is absolutely critical, because let's face it, yes, 6 months were a little bit limiting in terms of learning, but there was still learning. Children still learn, okay, but it was perhaps not the way that they would typically learn at school. And I think, and I'm sure, Ari, that you will agree with me, that this new normal allows us to perhaps look at it, hang on a minute, so what we were doing pre-COVID-19, should we perhaps reconsider a different approach? And I think this is what we should be really doing, really. So what worked before, does it still work? Perhaps not, because we have got a lot of red tapes at the moment, as you were saying earlier on, that the children perhaps cannot manipulate the environment as they would earlier on. So just to kind of like going back, we need to reconnect socially, emotionally. It's okay most of the time to feel the way we do. Talk about our emotions. Realize that, where does the anger come from? Where does that frustration come from? Really look at that behavior, and then to see, well, are those conditions right? Or perhaps we need to culture it, nurture it in the right way, so perhaps the behavior will move in a different direction. I don't know what you would like to say,
I
Ari.
like the word reconnect. That is so, so important. Children need to reconnect with other children, need to reconnect with their teachers, parents need to reconnect with educators, so that reconnection should be the focus of the learning, really. Social and emotional interaction when they are transiting back to school, whether face-to-face or even online learning, they need parents and educators need to think, how do we reconnect? So that should be like the first phase. And then we can talk about, once they feel settled, once children feel confident, and parents feel confident as well, the child is on track right now. And I'm sure everything will fall into place later on. For example, the academic learning, I'm sure step by step we will get there. So, but there is no point putting children in that pressure cooker environment, saying that, look, you have missed out on all this learning. Okay, these are the skills that you must attain by the end of the 3rd month, for example, and children will be like, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to love school or nursery, and yet I have so much pressure, it's not fun anymore. I don't want to go there. So we have to think about, how do we create that supportive environment, and if I may say about what I have learned, I'm sure you have learned as well about this COVID situation, is to take, one day at a time, because things change so fast. You may make plans. I mean, plans are certainly important. It gives us a direction. But if we're too focused on the plan, too focused on the future, we forget about the present, about the moment, like you said just now. Don't forget the moment. At this point, let's reconnect. What skills do you have? What do you want to learn? What's your next step? Okay, so we have to focus more of what's in the moment, rather than trying to, pressure children to get where they're supposed to be in future. That will come. But first, we know that we need to reconnect and have, that good balance of social and emotional skills before we can think about, okay, what's the next step? What is the academic skills required?
I agree with you, Ari. I really like the word pressure cooker that you were using, because that's a very good analogy of how we really need to ensure that children do not have that feel that there is just such a high expectation. Don't get me wrong, high expectations are good, but they need to be very realistic, and therefore they need to be in that moment that we are finding ourselves all in. So absolutely, connections are everything. I'm sure that you would agree with me that children actually most of the time do not remember what we were talking about, or what they were learning with us, but they always remember how we made them feel.
Oh,
Right?
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for your time. We have one request. Find out from children what they think of school readiness. Ask your own child or a neighbor's child or child in your classroom. Ask them what they think. The skills that are related to being school ready. Let's give them a voice. So, Pavla, what will we be discussing next?
Next time we will see you when we will discuss the topic, well, if the teachers are teaching as well as parents are teaching, why are not children learning? Till the next time, bye.